Hello everybody, welcome to the Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series. My name is Divya Sagar and I'm the Marketing Manager at the Citrix Ready program. I'm your host for the webinar today and I'm also happy to have our Citrix Ready partner X1 along with me at this webinar. So first of all, thank you all for attending the webinar today and taking the time to join us. This is the Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series where we showcase how Citrix and our Citrix Ready partners have integrated their products to deliver some valuable solutions to common problems faced by our customers. So let me also introduce our main speakers today. We have Trent Botta from X1, who's the CTO at X1. We have Barry Murphy, who's the Senior Vice President of Product Marketing at X1. And we have Sridhar Mullapuri, who's the Director at Product Management at Citrix. So let me move on to the next slide and quickly introduce the Citrix Ready program. So Citrix Ready is an end-to-end technology partner program that showcases and recommends third-party products, solutions, and services that demonstrate compatibility with Citrix products. Customers can quickly and easily find solutions recommended by Citrix in the Citrix Ready marketplace. For that, you could navigate to www.citrix.com/ready. And you can also navigate to citrix.com to find some more information about the Citrix Ready program. Let me also quickly introduce X1, who has been our Citrix Ready partner since year 2013. X1 offers next-generation desktop and enterprise search solutions designed for business professionals to quickly find and act upon critical business data. They have over 300,000 users worldwide. The agenda for the day, is that we are here to see why desktop and enterprise search are both critical elements of end-user productivity. And we will also learn how to enable lightning fast end-user retrieval of emails and files even without Windows indexing. Thirdly, we will also explain to you how you can gain all the benefits of VDI while still providing end users with a user-friendly, spontaneous search solution architected to save VDI resources. Finally, you will also learn about and see an example of how one large organization is using X1 search as an incentive to get more users to get on to virtual desktops. Before we get on into the presentation, I would like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and we will be distributing the webinar recording via email in a couple of days. Also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to use the questions panel on the right-hand side and put in your question there. We will take all these questions and answers at the end of the session, and once we are done with the presentation. So without any further delay, let me welcome our first speaker, Sridhar, who's the Director at Product Management at Citrix. Hi, Sridhar, and I'm happy to pass the time over to you.
Hi, thanks. So in terms of agenda itself, I'll kind of go through, for people who are new to desktop virtualization or app virtualization and new to Citrix, I'll kind of go through a little bit of, use cases and why, why this is critical, why a lot of customers are adopting, and then we'll go into the, details of the meat of the presentation. So, first, end user computing itself is I would say it's getting increasingly complex, right? One, a lot of things around security risks, and I think, in the world we live in, especially for a lot of the regulated industry customers, security threats are increasing, not decreasing. Second, a lot of people are, work from anywhere, any device, and that trend, whether it's telecommuting or work from anywhere, is growing. And I think the biggest part of this is really device innovation. I mean, it's just, look at the number of devices every one of us has today, and on average, everybody has 2 or 3 devices, and they want to get to their, enterprise applications, desktops on any of this device without compromising security or without trying to rewrite the whole application for those devices, right? So it's a lot of needs which should drive the desktop and application, delivery needs. Next slide. And when we look at, what are the real challenges, reasons why our customers are adopting desktop and application, virtualization are kind of like, one on the business side and one on the IP side. As far as a challenge for business, it's bring your own device. Now it's high in certain geographies and certain segments, maybe not high, but we're seeing a lot of bring your own device, because as I said, everybody has their multiple devices and want to be able to get their work done on the device of their choice, and organizations are in some cases forced to be able to support that with the new workforce. Second, you have mobile applications, right? And a lot of times the enterprise apps, you just can't completely rewrite them as a mobile apps. That's where XenApp and XenDesktop help simplify mobilizing those applications. For those quick access to those enterprise apps through your mobile devices, we kind of make it a reality. And other use cases, things like designers and engineers, are stuck to workstations, which is not secure, plus which is not mobile, and want to collaborate much better. Last but not the least is, a lot of remote offices, branch offices, and things where, you don't have great network connections to replicate everything between your primary data center and branch office, and they have be served through a centralized architecture with better security, performance, and user experience. And if you look at what are the challenges on the IT side, you've got obviously PC refresh going on, which essentially takes a lot of dollars, initiatives, and expensive and slow, and doesn't really fit in the mobile world today. And maintaining a lot of set of different images for the corporate laptops, all these are challenges that customers are facing today, that they're looking new ways of delivering those applications and desktops. Contractor and partner access, that's a huge priority for a lot of the customers, including following the security needs for them. How do you not ship laptops to these contractors and partners and actually make them access your internal applications and in a much secure fashion? And last is use cases like call centers and stuff where they don't want to maintain expensive real estate and want to be able to have the agents work from anywhere. So you kind of need all that flexibility to keep up with the increasing business needs. And the last thing I want to talk about is, we're talking in this presentation about VDI and, in particular, and the search experience and everything else. What XenApp and XenDesktop, really do is, enable FlexCast, right? And when we talk about FlexCast, it's not always about VDI, or it's not always about applications or shared desktops. There's a lot of different needs based on different users, right? Whether you're talking about high-end users and graphical workstation needs, or contractors and others who need, just application needs, or you have users who need, online or offline full desktops, personalized desktops. You have call centers, who might be deploying Link as their main center. There's a lot of different use cases, and XenDesktop, through FlexCast, enables that people-centric use case driven, right? And it's not just about one technology, and XenDesktop and XenApp kind of enable you to do all those use cases on a single unified platform.
Well, thanks, Sridhar. This is Barry Murphy with X1. That was a really good overview of why organizations are embracing, desktop and virtual or application virtualization. And what we learned at X1 is that the virtual desktop is not like the physical one. And X1 has had a desktop search tool in the market for many years now, and it's been a very popular search tool because it allows, as you'll see in a moment, it allows sort of the human brain of the business worker to drive the search process. But what we've learned is that there's a difference between the virtual desktop and the physical desktop, and most of these separate the user data from the apps and the desktop images, and it is best practice to turn off virus scanning and indexing tools that could take up valuable shared resources. And so what can happen, as we learned from some customers of ours that were using X1, is that the lack of ability to search for those high-value business workers can be frustrating because if they turn the Windows indexing off, the users are not able to search through their email and desktop files easily. And as Sridhar was saying, this is about being people-centric. And without the end users, there is no return on investment. If the end users, can't get what they need to do done, that's exactly what happens. And so X1 having a traditional desktop search tool was approached by a customer to help solve that problem, right? To help allow the use of virtual desktops without indexing, but still providing the search user experience. And so what we did is we actually built the product. We built the X1 Search Virtual Edition, and we released that last year, just about a year ago. And very quickly there's been traction in a number of industries, and some large deals and recognition by analysts. And Gartner's job is to kind of be forward-looking and to think about what are the new cool technologies that are going to help enable successful deployments of things like VDI. And so in the recent report on cool vendors in endpoint computing, Gartner found that X1 can improve the end user experience on hosted virtual desktops, and their advice is to budget for a product like X1 to improve the virtual desktop user experience. And that's a really big thing, is that you have to capture the end users. And we're going to talk about this in our case study, but this can really be a way to entice users to the virtual desktop as well. Now, nothing actually gives you the experience of X1 like seeing it. PowerPoint slides don't do it the justice that it needs. So I am going to have our Chief Technology Officer, Brent Bate, take over for a moment and show you the X1 Search product in action.
Great, Barry. Thank you very much. As you can see on the screen, we have the desktop application. This is the same UI that we use for the desktop and for the virtual edition. To kind of give you a lay of the land, on the left-hand side, this is where we put all of our data sources, or where we're getting data from. So you can see I have Outlook, my Exchange account for work. I have network file shares. We've also added SharePoint, which we're not re-indexing SharePoint. We execute a remote search and get the results back, which I'll go into detail in a little bit. And at the very top, we have where we can federate or combine the results from some of these searches. So you can search your network files and your Exchange email and attachments and find those items that you received, but you don't know exactly where they're at. Across the top are some saved searches, very popular items that I go to that I can come back into. Standard search bar, and then all the actions that we can take. Right now I'm on an email, so what I'm going to do is close it out, and this is searching my entire inbox for the word marketing. But I want to narrow that down, and one of the beautiful parts of X1 tool is it's got tap as you type. So I'm going to go into column headings, and this is from the From category. One from Catherine. I know she sent me a PDF file, and it was sometime this last year that I was looking for it. Oh, there it is. I recognize it's the new X1 Search. It's a product briefing. So it's got probably the graphic for the footer, and then it's also got the product briefing. If I just double-click, it will load that product briefing up. It's a high-fidelity preview on the box, so you can see the content and how it would look if we just open up a PDF reader. Or I can go back into the message itself. Now, once I found this information, we want to take action on it. So to do that, we have multiple ways. We have them across the top, or we can right-click here, and I can put them all in one. I can open the email, which will actually open up Outlook and then open up the actual message for me, do all the standard replies, delete what we want to do with it, send it, forward it out, and away we go. Now, it's wonderful for email, but I also want to use it for network shares, my local documents. In this case, I have all of my same local documents done, combined with one of my network shares and a cloud service altogether. So if I come in here and just type in under the name, I'm looking for marketing in the content of it, and I'm looking for the name. I typed in Pro. I was looking for product. You can see it's an Excel spreadsheet. You can see how everything's laid out. Now, if this is something that I was going to use all the time, I could go ahead and save this. So if I save it, and I could just say marketing Pro, and it'll go ahead and put it down here as a safe folder. So every time I go to that, it would already have these search terms in there. So a lot of people will have 15, 20 search terms that are very complex with terabytes of data, and they can put them in and they can quickly get to it without reinitiating all those terms. If I want to add it up to the favorite bar, just right-click and add it. So now it's up here. I can tell it's the file because it's got the green folder, and it's got focus right now. So that's what's driving the results. Now, as I talked about, we can go in and federate these results. So if I come under, I've already got a safe search called marketing. If I come in and type installer, so what this is actually federating against is files, all of my Outlook, emails, all the six different forms of Outlook data. I can add other things in there that I wanted. We have quite a bit of data sources to choose from, and then we could federate from those. On this one, the top one is a file. Next one down is an email. You can see because the from category is populated. So from the file, if I found it, let's just say this is what I'm looking at right now. This is something I want to take an action on, but what I wanted to do is actually add it to SharePoint. I have an add to SharePoint here. So it really helps users identify documents and organizations trying to transition into SharePoint to take data that they find and move it up into SharePoint. You can see we also have a box connector with that. So speaking of SharePoint, let me go ahead and jump down to that. So I've added our development SharePoint server, and unlike before where as I was typing I was getting results, what we're doing instead of reindexing SharePoint, we're taking the search terms, we're querying SharePoint, and we're getting the results back. And as those come back, you can see here, it's got a single file on this very narrow search that I was looking for. I can right-click that. I can check in. I can check out. I can also send an email. I can either send it as an attachment or I could send it as a link. And one of the other beautiful parts is if I know this is in a document library, I can go into it and it will show me the actual document library on the web page where it is in SharePoint so I can find other similar documents. That's it, Barry. Why don't we transfer back and I'll talk about architecture really quick. Thank you. Great. So what I want to do as we advance to the next slide is talk about how we've changed this. As Barry mentioned, a customer came to us with a solution, asking for the solution where on our standard desktop product, we have the user interface, which I just demonstrated. We have the indexing engines, which includes the ability to go get the data, extract it, and then we write it down to the actual physical indexes themselves. That all exists on one computer with the standard desktop edition. When the client talk to us about going to move that out to, say, non-persistent virtual desktops or virtualized applications, the next slide, what it'll do is it will show us how we've separated those to deal with not having that local storage. So on the left-hand side, we have the user interface. This can be hosted up through virtualized application or, like I said, non-persistent virtual desktops. We have storage down at the bottom, which is central. So the storage needs to be accessible by the user interface so we can read the indexes. It also needs to be accessible by the upper right-hand side, which is the excellent indexing server. So the way we've done this is as we initiate the indexing process on the servers, and each server can obviously have, it's a one-to-many as for indexes, we're starting this process as the user. So a lot of other folks, you have to deal with security permissions, you have a single account. That doesn't work well, or really doesn't work well for government agencies. They have to start these processes as the user. It keeps it very clean on the security permissions. So what we do is we open up the UI. You can go to the next slide. We open up the UI. When we do that, it initiates the request, which goes over. The UI is on the upper left-hand side. It initiates a request to the server farm on the upper right-hand side. We have a process there called the the VRM, the Virtual Resource Manager, that takes that request and then it load balances out to all of the indexing servers. So that has throttling and it deals with load, so you can deal with resources of each machine because not every hardware is the same. Once that figures out exactly which server to send it to, it will initiate that process as the user and it will fire up the indexing engines, and then from there we can go ahead and talk to Exchange, talk to the network shares, and then we write the indexes down to a central location. Those indexes are written out with the security permissions as that user and only that user and administrator of our virtual solution will be able to see them. You can see the communication. The primary one that we use is Microsoft's port sharing between the actual end user's UI and the server farm. So you just put them in an AD group and we just ride along with Microsoft on their security. There's no reason to reinvent how we're doing that. Go ahead, Barry. And real quickly, as I mentioned before, we do have the central management. It's a web console to manage the central point where all the requests come in. And that does, like I said, it balances things out for resources, and it also addresses throttling. We can control how often we talk to Exchange per indexing server inside of that cluster, so we're not overloading the Exchange farms inside of organizations. That's a huge concern. And we put the controls in there so every organization can set it that's appropriate for their client's needs. Go ahead, Barry.
Thanks, Brent. Appreciate that. I think when you put it simply, what we did with X1 is we separated out the application interface from the back-end index and indexing service. And it sounds very simple. I think technically it was a complex thing to build, but it solved a problem that a customer of ours was having. And what it also allowed us to do was bring a product to market last year that we knew there was demand for since we were asked to build it, but also we confirmed the demand for it with a nice government agency deal that I think really exemplifies the complementary nature of X1's virtual edition with application and desktop virtualization, but also provided some interesting insight into how you can actually use this technology in practice to get to sort of accomplish IT goals. And so this customer was a Citrix desktop and application virtualization customer, and really wants to double down on VDI, really wants VDI to be spread throughout its entire organization. And that's to support security strategies as well as simply data centralization strategies. And as Sridhar mentioned earlier, security is a big driver. For this customer, though, the workers at this agency need to be able to find information at the drop of a dime. They don't have time, to try to remember where they stored something or what location it might be in, or try to navigate to it themselves. And so the inability to sort of do that search was becoming a showstopper and blocking, the broader rollout of the VDI technology. And so with X1 and the virtual search product, they're able to not only provide the great end-user search experience, but also not have to turn on Windows indexing and take up those valuable shared resources. And so what's interesting with this customer is because they want to roll out the VDI technology across their entire organization, what they're doing is putting X1 only on the virtual desktop technology, not on the traditional desktops that they're trying to migrate users away from. And they're using X1 as a carrot, that carrot that allows the user to, because what happens is once you use X1, it's very difficult to go back to life without it. And when employees see their other coworkers using a search technology that makes them that much more productive, what happens is they want it. And we've seen organizations do this before, but it's kind of getting their employees kind of hooked on X1, so to speak. But to use it as a carrot to get people over to the virtual desktop was really sort of an interesting use case from our perspective, because that is kind of proof positive that the two technologies really do complement each other. And so being able to put X1 into their virtual desktops and get people over is going to help them not only have employees that are productive, but also accomplish their IT strategies around security and data centralization. And so there are about 20,000, 15,000 users at this organization, and it's expanding out, and it's expanding their desktop and app virtualization deployment and their X1 deployment as well. So being able to get that broader rollout of Citrix and have the excellent end-user search experience, it really adds up to a win-win. And so we're very excited because this allows us to expand out. It's great validation of the product. So between getting a very large customer, getting the validation from Gartner, them seeing the value of this technology, all of that adds up to what we see as sustainable success for this product. And quite honestly, there is more to it than that. What this architecture also enables is what we're going to call X1 Search Mobile. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go, and we'll start to kind of see it in action as we go here. Let me go back up. We'll play sort of how X1 Search Mobile works. And you'll see this kind of looping in the background as we talk through it. But you saw Brent sort of talk about the architecture where we separate out the index. And so what this means is that you've got an index that is always on. And that is going to enable mobility in a way that we haven't been able to do before. So with X1 Search Mobile, you'll actually be able to search your virtual and eventually your physical desktops, if those are there, from your mobile phone. So no longer will you have that wait for Exchange to load from the server, kind of clunky search experience. You'll actually be able to move the excellent X1 search experience to your mobile phone. So you'll still have fast as you type search results, the ability to filter by metadata. And what's really important here is that you're now searching all sorts of things. It's not that you're just searching email. You're searching your desktop files. You're searching things that go beyond just the Exchange server. So we work with a number of companies where people have tons and tons of PSTs, and they need to be able to search that. And they've relied on their X1 desktop search to be able to search through their PSTs for years, because that's no longer active on the Exchange server. So if you're just on an iPhone searching, you're only going to have access to what's on your Exchange server. With X1, you're going to have access to everything that lives on your desktop. And that includes files, and that will include other sources that X1 is able to search. So this is a brand new product that's coming out this month, the first version of it. And we're very, very excited because there's a lot of interest in in mobile search, because it simply is going to make people more productive. We know the world is moving to mobile, and it's going to leverage the security of the organization in the sense that it's going to integrate with leading MDMs or enterprise mobile management platforms, and really sort of enable companies to manage their BYOD policies. So as we've been talking to a number of customers, it's been important for them to be able to control which applications users can send email from, for example. So the way that X1 Mobile works is it will just simply integrate in with the mobile security strategies of an organization, and be able to kind of piggyback on that security, so to speak. So there won't be that security question around that BYOD policy. So it's just very exciting both for X1 and for the many customers that are kind of hopping on the bandwagon. Brent, I didn't know if you wanted to kind of talk at all about mobile from your perspective as the CTO and what it looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, it's a very exciting time to be able to take what we're doing with the virtual version of our software to allowing enterprises to virtualize and then extending that out to those mobile devices. So as you can see, the UI is very straightforward, piggybacks on the MDMs coming in, so security is taken care of, and we're utilizing the same indexes that we have already built. So it's very quick, and you're going to have consistent results between what you see on your desktop or your virtual desktop and what you see on your mobile device.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of questions come in. Let me see if I can see what those. Brett, this one I think is for you. It's asking, is X1 server MCS and PVS agnostic?
I have to get back on that. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that is. Yep.
I'm not sure what. Yeah, if there's any more context on that.
I can take that question. So MCS and MCS, this is Sridhar. MCS and PVS are technologies we have for provisioning the machine itself, whether it's VDI or XenApp machines. And MCS is kind of based on hypervisor. Talks directly to the hypervisor to create the machine, reset the machine, and things like that. PVS is more about streaming that image down to the server real time over the network, and makes image updates process and simple. And I think the simple answer is it shouldn't matter whether it's MCS and PVS, because you guys really work inside the OS itself, I think. But the broader question might have been it's like any testing and scalability or anything else for us to probably follow up.
Great, thank you. Brent, another question that came in is it possible to integrate with Exchange Online or Office 365 remote deployments?
Yeah, we're working on that right now. We can talk to 365 online only. We're using IMAP to make those connections to that on our roadmap. Since they're not using Mappy, which is we use to talk to Exchange right now on site, is we have to write new connectors for all that. So as that's picking up in the industry, we're considering writing those. But we do pull down the email itself through IMAP right now. Absolutely. And I think as everyone starts trending higher, going to that market, and it gets more of a foothold, that we'll have that to our stack.
Got it. There's another question. What kind of other sources does X1 search? So let me take that one. So X1 can search desktop email and desktop files, and then we have connectors for SharePoint, Box, Symantec Enterprise Vault, and we're working on more connectors like things for OneDrive in future releases. And we do some very interesting searching there. So we don't re-index that content. Like Brent was showing when he did the demo with SharePoint, we're not creating a new index of that content. We're actually doing a remote search of that content and then bringing it back into the end user interface. And so what that does is it makes IT happy, because you're not re-indexing other enterprise sources over and over and over again. And for things like SharePoint, which don't always have the greatest search experience, you're now giving your end users the X1 interface in which to do their filtering. So that works really well. And then when we do things like Box, like data sources like Box, we actually provide some pretty flexible indexing options where You can make an index of the content locally without actually storing the content locally. Or you can do a remote search to that data source. So we give IT a lot of flexibility in terms of how they want to deploy and how they want to give users access to that content. And that becomes really important if you think about these kind of file sync and share solutions. The amount of content that gets stored in them, becomes very heavy, and to have that synced on the desktop at all times isn't tenable for a lot of organizations. So to have that flexible indexing where you can find it really quickly, you get that excellent search experience, you can now make investments in those technologies and still have a great end user experience around search. So that's been really important. So it's Semantic Enterprise Vault, Box, and SharePoint are some of the data sources. We also have a server-based enterprise search and e-discovery product called Rapid Discovery, and that we can use to sort of extend the desktop search out into the enterprise. So that is a system for indexing enterprise repositories like network file shares as an example, indexing them once and then making them available to users in the desktop search application, much like we would with SharePoint, where we then broker the search over to the Rapid Discovery server and provide those results. And that's when our IT tends to want to do, especially around file systems, but also there's an SDK to write, to connect to other enterprise systems like document management systems or records management systems as needed. So in that way, X1 is much more than a desktop search provider. It's really an enterprise search solution, again, focused on that end user experience. For companies investing in desktop and application virtualization, it really becomes the end user gateway to information, and that's what we're seeing happen in a lot of these organizations. So, Divya, I wanted to see if there were any other questions that had come in from you, and we're happy to answer any of those that we can.
Sure. I think some of these are covered. Let me just. So there is one question from our listeners which says, how long has this product been available and what kind of customers are investing in it? So do you have some answers around that, Barry?
Sure. So this product has been generally available for just about a year. We released it last year after being asked to build it by a customer we were working with, and we've seen VDI be popular in various industries. X1 tends to do well sort of all over the place in terms of any business with workers that need or act on information constantly. But in particular, there's been a lot of success, in industries where those workers are at the forefront. So financial services, professional services like law firms. A lot of those industries are investing heavily in VDI because of security and mobility concerns. And the other place where we've seen a lot of success, as you saw from the case study, is in government. And again, they're driven by mobility and security. But those are the ones that we see, popping up most frequently. And X1, from the traditional perspective, really we have a footprint in a lot of various types of organizations. But we've seen a lot of interest in the VDI product over the last year, primarily in financial services, professional services, and government.
Great. Another question that has just come in is that is the ShareFile integration in the pipeline as well?
Is the SharePoint integration? I didn't hear the last part of that.
Yes. So the listener is asking if the ShareFile integration with the product is in pipeline.
The SharePoint integration in place today? Yes, it is. we've had a SharePoint connector for well over a year, and it actually it is a driver of a lot of the deals that we do that are enterprise wide, because organizations have made investments in SharePoint, but do not want to be bothered with trying to make the search experience optimal, because it's kind of the old approach to search. It's the web page with a link to a result and having to open the document. Whereas with X1, it's allowing you to filter based on kind of knowing what you're looking for to a certain extent, and then filtering on the metadata that helps you kind of remember, okay, this was a document about XYZ and created in a certain time frame, and X1 really allows you to do that. So organizations that invest in these things like SharePoint tend to find that X1 complements it well, and much in the same way that X1 complements the Citrix VDI technology. You can use the BASF analogy, where we don't make it, we just we make it a better user experience, a more comfortable user experience for search, and a more powerful user experience. So that tends to be how it goes with SharePoint as well.
Well, that sounds good. So I think we have covered most of the questions, Barry and Brent. So is there anything else that you guys want to cover from your end?
Yeah, I just got a question emailed to me, and it's kind of interesting. It's sort of a general question, but it's, what are the risks of simply not having search available to users? And I think we've seen it firsthand. If users don't have search, they're going to figure a way around the system so that they can, especially if they're a high-value worker who is operating a lot off their email and their files, and they need to find an answer quickly. They're on a phone call and they need to find that email that they had. So the risk is that users will go outside and around the system if they don't have functionality like search available to them. So that becomes the risk that IT needs to deal with, is, are people going to circumvent the system, or even say, what, I'm going to get around it somehow, some way, and that's not going to meet IT strategies in terms of a successful initiative. So as we mentioned before, without the users, it is difficult to get the ROI, and so we're seeing customers that are very happy with X1, and then as a result very happy with their VDI deployment, because their users are getting what they need out of it. I don't see any other questions. I did want to mention that
right.
Brent and I are both available as needed. For any questions, contact us directly, and we can certainly help with any of that.
Great. And in case there are any questions that we missed, or if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to Brent and Barry or Citrix Ready team at and the email ID citrixready@citrix.com, and we'll be happy to answer your queries. For more information, also visit the X1 page at Citrix Ready Marketplace. And so finally, let me thank Brent, Barry, and Sridhar. I think it was a wonderful presentation, and the demo was really interesting and very cool, and gave us a lot of good information about the product. So let me again remind everybody that the webinar recording will be available for you to scroll to listen to, and we will make sure that it is posted to you as soon as we can. So with that said, any closing remarks from Barry or Brent? Anything from you?
No, just I want to thank everyone for attending, and encourage you to reach out if you have any questions.
Great. So once again, thank you everybody for attending the webinar today. And this is all of us signing off from the Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series. And this concludes our broadcast. Thank you.